okay? Something that will interest most of you in the room. So to help me gain an understanding of what your level of interest is, could I ask how many of you in the room are either owners or directors of your own recruitment company or thinking of? Okay, so there's a large number of you. Okay, how many of you are consultants? Yeah, good, that's useful. How many of you would say you work for a large corporate recruiter, a Deco, a Hayes? Yeah, okay, not many. How many of you work for a niche recruiter? Yeah, okay, majority of it. Generalist recruiters? Okay, good, that's helpful. So this is a bit of background to me. If you're on social media, if you're in Twitter, I'm big on Twitter, so that's my Twitter stream or Twitter name. I've been in the recruitment industry for about 20, 30 years. I'm a business growth coach and trainer, and a lot of the time I do a lot of blogging and talking about the future of recruitment. We work with customers to help them build growth plans and business plans, and as part of doing that we have to look into the kind of time frame that we're talking about here. So this is the stuff that we're doing all the time. These are a couple of blogs that some of you will have seen. This one here is one of the most popular ones I've done. It's had about 30,000 users or readers. This one is the most recent one. I publish a blog every year on the top sectors in recruitment in the UK. And I blog regularly on things like future of work, future of recruitment, future of society, and skills. So that's the kind of background. That's why I'm here today, and that's why I'm talking about this topic. So the reason I asked about where your business is because from my perspective, and if you were here earlier to see Kevin, how many of you saw Kevin Green? Okay, so Kevin and I have a similar view of the future of recruitment, which is we see three potential models in the marketplace at the moment. We see up at this end here, the large volume, managed service type, master vendor, neutral vendor. There's a whole load of models. I could go through them all, but it's about processing large numbers of candidates, and over the next few years, it's about doing it as cheaply as possible. From my impression, I gauge very few of you in the room are doing that. Most of you are in one of these two boxes here. So you're either being a niche recruiter, and Kevin talks about a nano niche or a micro niche. So you're looking at something he characterizes the phrase inch wide a mile deep. Okay? And so these are niche recruiters. And then in the middle we have one or two generalists. Increasingly this group of businesses are struggling to maintain their profits because they're getting squeezed by these guys and they're not the specialism of these guys, and they're getting struggled. But where they work well is where they're local, they know their market, they know their customers, and they know the sector they're in. But they can be multi-sector. Does that fit most of you in the room? Good. Okay, so the business model that these people have is these people at this end, as I say, it's a one-stop shop. It's about processing volumes of applications. What they do is leverage the employer brand. So you won't be surprised that there are people like Pontoon, who are part of the Adecco group, that do the recruitment for people like Co-op Insurance. And they'll leverage the Co-op brand, and they'll do first tier and second tier management. Most of you, from what you're describing, are down this end. So you'll find a specialist, I know, UX developer or a cybersecurity analyst, and you'll know all the best cybersecurity analysts in a certain niche. And the most effective business model is what people are doing is exploiting the skill shortages in the market. And then in the middle we have, oh, whoa, that was interesting. Okay, so, and in the middle here we've got the one-stop shop who are trying to do both. So that's how I see the market. And the reason I want to tell you that is because when I start talking about the changes, it's the changes that are going to take place to these business models. So as part of what I do and the research I do and the tweets and the talks, I read a lot of surveys and reports that come out. And in today's talk, I'm going to reference most of these surveys. Okay, so we've got this end, the Workforce Economics Outlook from PwC. This is an American report called Forrester about the future of of predictions for the future. This is last year's World Economic Forum I couldn't get this in the slide deck from last week's Davos meeting, but there's stuff in there about that. We talk about Elon Musk. And you can pick up these or links to these sites from a blog I'll be publishing later today. So, one thing about all of these reports is that they are very different in the way they see the future. So I'm going to try and share with you some of the information. The market itself that we're moving into, what they do agree on is the technological changes that are going to impact us. So the first thing is automation. So that's robotics. And there are robotics in most of these work sectors that we operate in. Augmentation, that is where that you're going to use these new technologies to supplement, to support the jobs that exist in our niches and in our businesses today. And I will talk about the direct effect on recruitment companies of some of these tools later on. And then we've got artificial intelligence. Everyone's talking about artificial intelligence. I'm going to give you one example of how artificial intelligence is changing the niches that you are recruiting for right now and into the future. We're going to look at autonomous vehicles. That is driverless cars, driverless lorries. The future of those and how that's going to impact some of the sectors. 3D printing. But the one thing that is coming out of this, which we'll look at, is there is no clear consensus about what the future looks like. There are various models. Models that all of those of you who are business owners need to understand. And to be totally honest, some of you will be in the same position as some of our clients. You have a personal plan which is based on your lifestyle that you maybe want to sell your business or go through an MBO in the next 4 to 5 years. And this sort of stuff is going to directly affect how marketable your business might be in 5 to 10 years' time. What there is an agreement on is that there will be jobs lost. Millions of jobs, and I'll give you some figures and give you some sectors as to where they're likely to be. One thing that will come out of this is what's called the fractionalization of jobs. So the best way to think of this is that the jobs that you recruit for today, the roles, they're made up of lots of tasks. So I'll give you an example of a fractionalization of a job. So some of you in the room who've got grey hair like me probably went to a doctor about 20, 30 years ago, and your doctor would decide that in order to establish what's wrong with you, they needed to do a blood test. And they'd say to you there and then, roll up your sleeve, and they'd get a needle out and they'd take the blood out, and it would go off to the hospital, and they'd tell you what was wrong. Nowadays, they don't do that. Anyone been to the doctor recently, had a blood test? You don't go to a doctor. You go and see somebody who is called a phlebotomist. I've been practicing that for 2 days. And what they do is they just take, all they do all day long, really exciting job, is take blood. And that is an example of a fractionalization. You take a task that somebody does as part of their main job and you break it up and you give it into a new role. And that is what is going to happen in all of the jobs that you're doing and recruiting for now. So your landscape, the future of your world is going to change, either small or massively in the next 5 to 10 years. And there are going to be new roles created, jobs that don't exist today. So let's start looking at these reports. There are two main effects. So the first one is what's called the displacement effect. This is a negative effect. This is where workers and jobs are going to be directly displaced. They're going to disappear. And we're going to have robots like our friend here taking those jobs away. They're going to be automated. They will, however, or the tendency is, from what the reports are saying, is a lot of them will tend to be low-skilled jobs. So we're going to have warehouses with nobody in, with lots of robots in the dark moving around. By the way, that's not the future. That is today in some of the warehouses in Britain and across the globe. There's going to be a productivity effect. So all of this technology, in some cases, is going to make the labor that you supply more productive, more efficient, more effective, okay? Which is, in turn, going to reduce the cost of some of the goods we buy. And I'm told that that is going to tend, not always, to be the high-skilled jobs. So here's the first set of figures. So Deloitte's looked at the Office of National Statistics, so this is UK data. I know we've got some European colleagues in here today. So this is UK data. It's taken from the REC Future of Jobs report, which was published before Christmas, but the data is from Deloitte. And they estimate that in the last 5 years, so this is live, this is what's been happening, job losses in manufacturing are 720,000. So manufacturing has seen 720,000 jobs lost, of which 90% of them would have been a high chance that they've been automated. Wholesale and retail, 338. You can read the rest. Scientific and technical, interestingly, exists on both sides of this. 239,000 of which all of those had a high chance of being automated. Same time, you'll notice they're not the same sectors. The jobs that are being created are in healthcare and social care, 1.1 mil. 60% of those have a very low chance of automation in the future. Education, 746,000. It's no surprise, therefore, that some of the greatest skill shortages in the UK at the moment exist in healthcare and education. How many people work in that sector at the moment? Quite a few of you. Do those figures reassure you? Do you agree with those? Yeah? Good? Excellent. Okay, this is just one example. I found this fascinating. It was in the Daily Telegraph 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's refreshing to know that the John Radcliffe Hospital have a gentleman or a professor called Paul Leeson, who's with his colleagues come up with a mechanism of using technology to enable diseases, heart disease in this case, to be picked up quicker. They estimate this will save, or could save, the NHS £1.1 billion by being more efficient and more effective than the actual doctors and surgeons who do this at the moment. So this is taking a job or a task that's done by highly skilled professionals and using technology to augment it. 60,000 heart scans are carried out each year, 12,000 of which are normally misdiagnosed, which effectively costs the NHS £600 million. So that's the sort of example of what is happening. So this is the World Economic Forum. This is data from 2015 to 2020. So this is prediction of what is going to happen. Again, office automation, manufacturing, production, construction and extraction. These are the big sectors where jobs are going to be lost, and business, financial operations, management, computer and mathematical, that's where the jobs are going to be created. This is global data. I think you're starting to get a little bit of a picture. This is a great website. If you want to know of a job that you recruit for, how susceptible it is, there are a couple of British professors, Frey and Osborne. They've produced this data, which is quite detailed. I'm not going to go into the detail of how it's been produced, but you can look at the jobs. So at this end here, these are the high-skilled jobs which are the least vulnerable to being displaced by automation or the next few years. These are the ones that are most at risk. Here's a shock. How many of you do financial recruitment? Okay. Accountants, a high-skilled profession, is very strong chance, over 90% chance of being highly automated. And I'll give you an example of how that's going to occur in a minute. If you want to go online, on Bloomberg, again, there'll be a link on this later, you can put in a job description, and it will point to whereabouts on this axis it is. You might find it useful if you're in niche recruitment to put in whatever your job sector is. Okay, so I'm a business influencer with Sage. I have a relationship with them. They've shared this information with me today so that I can share it with you. This is an example of how a professional job is being automated. So this is something called PEG. Anybody use PEG as a matter of interest? Nobody, okay. PEG is an assistant. You can talk to PEG using Skype and a couple of other online apps, and you basically talk to her and she'll give you some answers. So this is an example of how it works. So you'll now see a quick slideshow. So you are interacting with PEG, sending her a Skype message. So I've just spent £2 on Post-it notes. I think it says at Tesco in a minute. Okay, this works, by the way. PEG will then give you a response. Got it, Have you a receipt? You take a photocopy of the receipt. Bang. You send it. Got it. And she puts it straight into your account. Those of you who run, how many of you run your own small business? Some of you use Xero. Yeah? Xero, not quite doing this, but this is what Sage 1 does. Okay? So you can see your whole conversation is happening online. When I set my business up 7 years ago, I had a bookkeeper do this. I used to pay her £40 a month to do my books. Basically, we now have an app that can do this for you. Do you think we'll be using bookkeepers in 10, 15 years' time? If you supply bookkeepers right now, you might want to look at moving into another sector or upmarket. Okay? Bank feeds. This has revolutionized this sector. You can get a bank feed, so you can get transactions that you get from your credit card, your bank card, which comes into either something like Xero or Sage 1. You can then attach all the receipts using what I've just shown you. And all of your banks, you can have a P&L literally 2 days after you have spent transactions, which tells you what your business is, how profitable it is. Okay? All of this is happening today. These are your high street banks. You just basically say, you set up a rule that says, I bought a cup of coffee, £2.50 from Starbucks. Your rules say, Starbucks, that's travel and subsistence, and it posts your transaction into travel and subsistence. I've just spent £15 on stationery from, I don't know, Ryman's in London. It knows that Ryman's is a stationer's, and it puts that in your stationery box. That's how easy it is. Okay, bit more complicated, but that's the sort of thing that Sage and Xero and people are working on. So can you see how that is de-skilling some of those lower-end jobs in accountancy? That's why accountants, when I do that survey, are considered to be at high risk of being automated. The more experienced people, the decision makers, the people who are deciding how you do accounts and the advice they give you, those jobs won't disappear, they'll be augmented, but the lower skill roles are disappearing. Okay, so a bit more about the UK factors. We looked at Carla Frey and the other guy, Osborne, a minute ago. As I say, they're professors at Oxford University. They're British professors. That was American data. This is UK data. So it's interesting. In the UK, insurance underwriters, 98.9% risk of losing jobs. Who works in the insurance sector at the moment? Okay? You might want to think about what sector you want to be in 5 years if that's what they're predicting. Loan officers, credit analysts. So these are all the jobs that they consider have a chance of being automated. If you send me a link on LinkedIn, anybody wants a copy of this presentation, connect with you on LinkedIn or send me a message and I'll send you the thing back. No problem with that. The positive side of this is we've got jobs being created. So believe it or not, first-line supervisors of mechanics, installers and repairers, keyword there is repairers, very low chance of being automated. Emergency managing directors, so somebody going into a business as an interim to cover for, I don't know, an injury or somebody leaving the company or whatever, very low chance. Audiologists, you can read all the rest of them down here. Sales engineers. We can all leave the recruitment industry to become sales engineers if you're worried about your jobs. Very low chance. Okay? Starting to get the picture. So this is again a different report saying similar things. This is a bit more general. This gives you some ideas. So down here, this report is from McKinsey's, and they estimate that the predictable physical jobs are going to disappear. Data processing, data collection, these are the ones that are at high risk. Managing jobs, so roles involving managers and people, they're less likely. Applying expertise and knowledge, less likely. And stakeholder engagement. The repair job I mentioned previously, that's unpredictable physical work. Hence the reason why it's not being automated. Because it's unpredictable. It's very difficult if you think about it. You've got a burst pipe in your loft to get a robot to go up in your loft and fix it. But if you want a robot to build your house, that's a lot more predictable. Okay, so now we'll move on a little bit. 30% of the jobs at risk in the UK by automation are, this is a report from PwC, they reckon 50% will be in transportation and storage, manufacturing, wholesale, retail, healthcare and social work, quite low down. Okay, the message that's coming through to me is if you're in manufacturing, if you're in transport, distribution, logistics, if you're in wholesale and retail, you might want to think about moving into a different sector. It's interesting, by the way, to note that there's only 30% of our jobs at potential risk, whereas US is 38 and Germany is 35, so that's quite good. How many of you got kids? Yeah, quite a few of you. How many of you got kids at primary school? Interesting. According to the World Economic Forum, it's 65%, so 2/3 of the children at primary school today will end up in jobs that don't currently exist. So if you've got an 8-year-old who is about to leave school in 10 years' time, World Economic Forum is saying there's two-thirds of those jobs that they're likely to go into don't even exist today. Benefit for you if you've got parents who are, if you've got kids who are doing GCSEs, you might want to make a note of this. 46% of GCSE students, their jobs will be at risk if that's their highest qualification. But if they've got a degree, better chance of keeping their jobs. This is taken from a Salesforce infographic. It just represents the information differently, but you're starting to get the picture here, algorithm and X. So this is augmentation here. They estimate that in the next 5 years, AI will help create 2.1 million jobs. So that's through automation. And the key skills that they see jobs that won't be automated are where we have to collaborate, innovate, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. So where those skills are important to the job that you're recruiting, you're okay. So, in summary, the jobs that these reports are saying they can't automate or will exist are where emotional intelligence is important, emotional support, so caring jobs, creative, original thought. Robots, AI, they're not able to hold conflicting ideas in their mind at the same time. So that's where you've got conflicted contracts and abstract thinking. They can't do that. So where your clients' jobs, so in like the technology industry, you can see why those sort of things are very difficult. Sales, persuasion is a skill that at the moment robots can't do. This is a really important, for me it's quite simple, but it's actually a really important job to think about. So as we start to think about which sectors our recruitment business is going to be successful in the years to come, this is why the future is not clear. There are effectively two scenarios, or two. One is that jobs emerge very slowly, or 4 scenarios. One is that jobs are created slowly. So that results in, that's a false alarm. That means nothing's going to change. Okay? I don't hear from those reports many people saying that this is an issue. The jobs crisis is where new jobs emerge slowly, but the current jobs are displaced quickly, which means we get lots of unemployment. For us in recruitment, this is not a good place. And this is not a good place because the opportunities for us to sell into skills gaps are going to disappear. Most of the skills gaps are going to occur here or here. So this is where new jobs emerge quickly and jobs are displaced quickly. So the dynamic market is going to be really dynamic. It's going to change rapidly. And labour shortage, this is in this sector where we create new jobs, but we actually don't get rid of, or people don't get displaced quickly. So those are the 4 scenarios. You might want to take that, look at that. AI, impacts of AI on recruitment itself. So AI will increasingly be used to sift candidates, screen compliance, skill verification, tasks that the volume recruiters will be able to use AI for. Video interviewing, collaborative hiring, gamification, new platforms. This is taken from the RSC Future Jobs. You can get that through the RSC if you want to look at it. It's on their website. There's a good report out there. Interestingly, though, this is going to drive down, so the large volume recruiters are going to be able to buy these tools and they're going to be able to squeeze the price or the charge that they charge their clients at the moment even lower than it is now. So for those of us that are SMEs, our ability to compete with these guys is going to become increasingly difficult. I actually spoke to somebody last night who works for one of the largest recruitment companies in the world. He's a very senior director. He estimates in 10 years' time, they won't even be selling people, they'll just be selling data. So what's the consequences for recruitment? So the job crisis scenario we talked about, that scenario would be a real threat for us. Market disruption. This is going to disrupt the markets that all of you are working in. Your clients, your candidates, there could be a huge amount of disruption so fast that your consultants can't respond. We could get another threat, which is we get an oversupply of labour. There have been times in the last 20, 30 years in my career where we had large numbers of people who were put out of work, and if you're in permanent recruitment, it was really very, very difficult to make money. We could have high levels of unemployment as a result of that. It could be that the dynamics of the market are so fast that for our consultants to understand where the new skills are, where the gaps are, and it's moving so fast, we can't keep up. And it's going to disrupt those customer relationships you have today. The opportunity, and I like to think positively, is that your competitors' relationships are also going to be disrupted. So if you think about it, you're trying to get into a company down the road, you've been trying to knock on the door for like, I don't know, 2-3 years. This sort of change creates opportunities for your consultants, for you, to get in there if you have the finger on the pulse. If you understand the market, if you can recognize where the opportunities and the skill shortages are, and you know how to get those candidates, then those disrupted relationships are going to give you an opportunity to grow. There are going to be rapidly created skills gaps. There are going to be labour shortages in certain scenarios. They're going to create roles for you to consult. So think about fractionalisation of jobs. We'll come and look at that in a minute. And it's going to enable you to develop strategic partnerships. Your clients, who are SME businesses, are going to need you as SME recruiters to help them navigate this dynamically changing market. So defragmentation of jobs. Can you imagine you've got 2 jobs, A and B, and these are various tasks within the jobs. We automate some of these tasks, and we end up essentially with a new job here, and these tasks being automated. So one of the skills that your consultants and you need to learn is how this happens. What are the tasks that are going to be automated and the ones that aren't? And in SMEs, they won't necessarily be talking to each other. So you, as the people in the middle, will be able to consult and advise on this. This is an opportunity for you. But in order to take advantage of it, you have to understand your market. You have to understand how jobs are performed, what tasks are involved, and get a picture of which ones are automated. So at the top here, where you've got stable job families, and there's low technological impact, the MSPs and the RPOs, businesses, are going to be able to deliver candidates very, very cheaply. My prediction is you're going to really struggle to do much business up here. Where you're going to be able to make your money is here, where new roles are emerging, where there's high levels of technological impact, where with your expertise and knowledge, you're going to be able to work out as niche recruiters. And this is why this specialization is going to get narrower. You're going to be able to understand what are the roles that are going to emerge and how to find those people. So if I was advising you guys, if you're a niche recruiter, that's what I would be doing. At the risk of upsetting some of you or alarming some of you, those of you who are generalists, it's going to be difficult because these boys are going to be offering recruitment at silly prices that you can't compete with. And if you're not aware of where the skills are and where the niches are, you might get squeezed out by the SME niche recruiters. So now's the time to start thinking about a strategy to move away from that. So as niche recruiters, we need to become true experts. We need to know the technology impact on our sector. We need to understand which roles are being displaced, which ones are being created. We need to understand the dynamics of our sector. We need to understand our clients. their business, and how this is going to affect them. If we align ourselves to their growth plans and their business plans, this is a great opportunity for you to grow your business fast. You need to build strong networks, you need to build strong skill set understanding, and you need to build strong relationships. Funnily enough, that's pretty much what you guys have to do now, isn't it? But your best recruiters are going to have to become better. I want to leave you with a couple of slides about the future. I can't talk about the future without talking about this chap, Mr. Musk. He reckons semi-autonomous vehicles are 10 times safer than human beings, and that he reckons that the cars will be totally autonomous in America and Europe by 2019. By the way, just in case anyone's aware, that's next year. There is a car that is traveling at the moment from San Francisco to New York. There is a person sat behind the wheel, because there has to be for legal reasons, but it's driving itself. It's being controlled by a computer, and it can be changed direction at any point in time. He estimates in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to buy a car that will be semi-autonomous. It will drive you to work, and then it'll drop you at work, and it will then go home, and it'll take your partner to the shops, she'll do the shopping, or it'll take your kids to school. And at the end of when it's done those shifts, you can either lend it to Uber to earn you some income by taking its 5-star customers around. Your car won't need replacing for 20 odd years. It'll cost you more money, but it's only got about 200 moving parts in the engine. Your current car, which is either diesel or petrol, has got about 20,000. He said, by the way, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Your house is going to have solar panel roofs. It's going to have a power wall here, which is going to collect all the electricity here, and your house could go off the grid. This technology is around today. By 2030, in the time frame I'm talking about, everybody in the Western world who wants one will have one of these houses. And it will be as cheap. It will be cheaper than buying from electricity companies. You might want to think about that if your main customer right now is Southern Electric. Okay? This is the bit that blew me. You all know about SpaceX. He's got reusable rockets. They go 8 times further than the Saturn rockets that went to the moon. Sorry, 4 times faster. He reckons in the next 8 to 10 years, there will be rockets going to Mars. And he makes the bold claim that in his lifetime, and he's 46, there will be a city with 1 million people living on Mars. So space exploration is a massive growth industry. Advances in healthcare. We are already 3D printing body parts. Gene therapy. In the past year, developments have occurred in relation to the use of gene therapy to get rid of the symptoms of aging. Okay? We've got a bionic eye. Apparently, this has been fitted to a patient in Australia, and Dr. Aubrey Gray made a claim a couple of years ago that the first child to live to be 150 years of age is already been born. I'm going to leave you with one sobering fact. Dr. Aubrey Gray has also made the claim that by 2030, the first child to live to be 1,000 years old will also be born. So those of you who haven't had children, who are thinking about it, that is a pretty daunting prospect. So our world is changing, and what I'd like you to think about is the effects it's going to have on your business. Okay? Don't just, as we have a tendency to do in recruitment, carry on thinking about the next 3 to 6, 12-month horizon. You need to start thinking about the sectors you're in. If you're in manufacturing, distribution, it might be time to start looking at other sectors. Thanks very much. I hope it's been useful. If you want a copy of the slides, just drop me an email.